On June 23, 1947, pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying near Mount Rainier when he reported seeing 9 large circular objects moving at extreme speeds. He described their flight as looking like a saucer skipping across water. Newspapers grabbed the phrase "flying saucer," and the modern UFO craze began. When we observe an ambiguous light in the sky, our brains struggle to process the visual gaps. Without clear data, we often project familiar shapes and narratives onto these sightings, mapping what we see to the cultural archetypes and science fiction of our time. To step away from the cultural baggage of alien sightings, government and scientific bodies now use the term UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena. This terminology shift coincides with efforts like the Pursue system, which recently released vast troves of declassified historical military encounters to the public. Sifting through these records requires a completely inverse approach. Instead of hunting for extraterrestrial spacecraft, scientists systematically hunt for ordinary objects. They actively try to prove that a sighting is entirely mundane to isolate the actual anomalies. Almost all historical UAP evidence shares the same fatal flaws. Analysts are usually handed highly compressed, low-resolution photographs with stripped metadata and completely undocumented digital handling histories. Conventional camera sensors, much like human eyes, simply are not engineered to capture high-speed, distant objects moving through the atmosphere. They introduce motion blur and optical artifacts that warp the shape of whatever they are recording. When an investigation lacks calibrated sensor data, timestamps, and GPS coordinates, there is nothing concrete to analyze. In that vacuum of verifiable information, conspiracy theories thrive because the scientific method has no material to work with. In July 1947, military personnel recovered strange metallic and rubber debris from the New Mexico desert. The Roswell incident quickly became the cultural epicenter for allegations of crashed off-world hardware and a massive government cover-up. Decades later, the General Accounting Office initiated a massive audit. The Air Force scoured archives and released personnel from security oaths, culminating in the publication of the Roswell Report. They found zero evidence of recovered alien bodies or extraterrestrial technology. The materials scattered across the desert matched the exact specifications of a highly classified military surveillance initiative known as Project Mogul. The supposed alien bodies reported by witnesses were actually anthropomorphic test dummies carried aloft by these massive, high-altitude research balloons. Systematically auditing classified archives and unsealing Cold War-era programs strips away decades of accumulated myth. It establishes a baseline of reality, proving that intense secrecy usually hides terrestrial military research, not interstellar visitors. Today, analysts look to event-based sensing, or EBS, to bypass the limits of standard imaging. Instead of capturing static backgrounds, this technology isolates movement by treating every pixel as an individual sensor. A standard camera records the entire scene frame by frame, capturing static features like mountain peaks and empty patches of sky. An event-based sensor deliberately ignores all of those background elements. This data visualization shows how the sensor only registers pixels where a change in luminance occurs. It outputs sparse data composed purely of motion, allowing small, fast-moving targets to become incredibly prominent against the empty black void. By forcing the environment to go dark, investigators can instantly isolate the distinct kinetic behavior of an object. The way a target moves and reflects light creates a mathematical signature that can be categorized. This 3D scatter plot shows the specific signature of a commercial aircraft flying at night. The data clusters map a steady, horizontal trajectory, punctuated by rhythmic gaps that correspond exactly to the required flashing of FAA-mandated anti-collision lights. This plot maps a different target entirely. The steep, solid blue diagonal lines indicate an uninterrupted, high-speed path with no periodic strobing. This continuous trace identifies the object as an orbiting satellite. Weather balloons leave their own distinct traces. They drift slowly within high-altitude wind currents, occasionally generating sharp optical artifacts when their massive, curved surfaces catch the glare of the setting sun. Biological targets pose one of the most frustrating challenges. Military targeting pods are optimized for combat, not ornithology. A single bird at high altitude can easily register as an indistinct, glowing mass on a thermal infrared display. In 2023, European Command submitted a UAP report showing a strange object captured on an infrared sensor. Analysts resolved the case by charting the pulsating heat returns and matching that exact frequency to the mechanical downstroke of a bird's wings in flight. The vast majority of UAP reports melt away under this kind of scrutiny. When you apply the correct technical filter, mystery ships become passenger jets, high-altitude research balloons, and flocks of birds. So what happens when you run a dataset through all of these historical and physical filters, and the system still fails to identify the target? The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office maintains a catalog of genuinely unresolved cases. Recent incidents, like the PR-018 and PR-015 encounters recorded by U.S. military platforms over Europe, fall directly into this category. The unresolved cases in the AARO files are built on data from calibrated military sensors. These authenticated physical objects exhibit flight characteristics that fall outside our known engineering categories, showing no thermal exhaust plumes, no rotors, and no observable control surfaces. Because the data quality is high enough to rule out sensor artifacts and optical illusions, analysts are forced to accept that these are real, physical structures. They exist in our airspace, yet they currently defy our known categories of human engineering. The presence of unidentified targets operating near military installations represents a severe gap in domain awareness. For the Department of Defense, an unknown object in controlled airspace is a direct hazard to operational safety. The most probable explanations are entirely grounded in science and geopolitics. We may be documenting incredibly rare atmospheric phenomena, deeply complex sensor errors, or highly advanced surveillance platforms deployed by foreign adversaries. The scientific method demands restraint. By ruthlessly eliminating the ordinary, the misidentified, and the mythological, we clear the noise from the sky. Only by proving exactly what an anomaly isn't do we finally earn the right to discover what it actually is.